I was hiding behind the dressing room curtain at the bridal boutique, my 75-year-old hands shaking as I clutched my late husband's empty watchbox. The mahogany wood felt cold against my palms, so different from the warm metal that had lived inside it for 52 years. I'd just sold Robert's vintage Rolex for $3,500 to buy my granddaughter's wedding dress. The same watch his grandfather had given him, the one I wound every morning just to hear that familiar tick that made me feel like he was still close. But now, pressed against this fitting room wall like some kind of spy, I heard my 24-year-old granddaughter Rebecca telling her bridesmaids something that made my blood run cold. "My grandma's so pathetic," Rebecca laughed, her voice carrying clearly through the thin boutique walls. "She'll pay for anything to feel important. She's getting senile and desperate for attention." The bridesmaids giggled and I felt my knees go weak. This was the same granddaughter I'd raised from age 12 when her father died. The same girl I'd sacrificed everything for, including my husband's most precious possession. "She sold my grandpa's watch," Rebecca continued, and I could practically hear her eye roll. Like, who does that? It's embarrassing how she acts broke, but then drops $3,000 like it's nothing. My grip tightened on the empty watchbox until my knuckles went white. $3,200. That's what this dress cost. More money than I spend on myself in 6 months, living on my modest seamstress pension. But I'd done it anyway, because I thought it would make her happy. Because I thought she appreciated the sacrifices I made. Thank God for the free rent situation though. Rebecca's voice floated through the wall again. "Once we move into her building after the wedding, I'm setting serious boundaries. She can't kick us out since it's family property. And we literally can't afford market rate anywhere else." What my granddaughter didn't know, as she stood there in that $3,000 dress bought with her grandfather's watch money, was that her pathetic senile grandma had just decided she wouldn't be getting that rent-free apartment after all. In fact, she was about to learn exactly who owned what in this family, and it wasn't going to be the lesson she expected. Before we continue, subscribe for more stories that speak to every woman who's ever been undervalued, overlooked, or underestimated, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Now let me back up and tell you how I got to this moment, hiding in a bridal boutique like some kind of elderly detective. My name is Dorothy Sullivan, though most people call me Dot. I'm 75 years old, and I've been a widow for 6 years now. My husband Robert and I were married for 52 beautiful years before cancer took him away from me. We lived a simple life. He worked construction, I was a seamstress, and together we saved every penny we could. 30 years ago we bought a small 4-unit apartment building in our neighborhood. Nothing fancy, just a solid investment that could give us rental income in retirement. Robert always said, "Dot, this building will take care of us when we can't work anymore." He was right. The rent from 3 units covers my living expenses, and I live in the 4th unit myself. But the building became more than just income 6 years ago. That's when everything changed. My son David, Rebecca's father, died in a construction accident when Rebecca was just 12 years old. Her mother couldn't handle raising a teenager alone, and basically disappeared from Rebecca's life within a year. So guess who stepped in? Me, a 69-year-old widow who suddenly became a full-time parent again. I raised that girl from 12 to 18, right here in my apartment, helped her with homework, drove her to school activities, sat through every parent-teacher conference. When she graduated high school, I was the one cheering in the audience. When she got her first job, I was the one who taught her how to balance a checkbook and do her own laundry. For 6 years, Rebecca was my whole world. The building that was supposed to support Robert and me in retirement became Rebecca's home. One of the rental units stayed vacant because I wanted her to have space. That's about $800 a month in lost income. But I didn't care. She was family. When Rebecca turned 18 and moved out to live with friends, I kept that apartment vacant anyway. Just in case, I told myself. In case she needs to come home. But really, I was hoping she would need to come home. The building felt so empty without her laughter, without someone to cook for, without someone who needed me. These days I spend most of my time alone. I have my morning routine: make coffee, wind Robert's watch, check on the building's maintenance. I call Rebecca almost every day, But she always sounds distracted. When she does visit, which isn't often, she's usually on her phone the whole time. Last month, when she got engaged to her boyfriend James, I was thrilled. Finally, something we could plan together. But every time I offered input on the wedding, Rebecca would sigh and say, "Grandma, things are different now. You wouldn't understand modern weddings." When I suggested she could save money by having the reception in our church hall, she laughed. "Grandma, that's so old-fashioned. We want something Instagram-worthy." When I offered to sew her veil like I'd done for dozens of brides over the years, she patted my hand condescendingly. "Your hands aren't steady enough anymore for something that important." But the worst part was how she talked about our living arrangement. She and James had been discussing moving into that vacant apartment after their wedding. Not asking, Egis. Discussing. Like it was already decided. Like I owed it to her. "It'll be perfect, Grandma," she'd said. "Just last week. We can't afford our own place yet. And you have that empty unit just sitting there. Plus, you're getting older. Isn't it nice that we'll be right there if you need anything?" The way she said it made me feel like I should be grateful. Like having them live rent-free in my building was somehow a favor to me, not them. But I pushed those feelings down. Rebecca was all the family I had left. If giving her a free place to live kept her close, maybe it was worth it. Maybe I was being too sensitive, too needy. That's why when I saw her face fall at the bridal boutique yesterday over that $3,200 dress, I didn't hesitate. The shop owner was explaining they needed payment in full before alterations could begin, and Rebecca just stood there staring at the dress like it was slipping away. I went straight home and got Robert's watch from our bedroom dresser, the same spot it had sat for 52 years. Every morning I wound that watch and listened to its steady tick. It was like having a piece of Robert still alive, still keeping time with me. But Rebecca needed that dress, and if selling the most precious thing I owned could make her happy on her wedding day, then it was worth it. At least, that's what I thought before I heard what she really thinks of me. Yesterday afternoon, I walked into that bridal boutique with $3,500 cash in my purse. The pawn shop owner had been fair about Robert's watch. It was a 1967 Rolex Submariner, originally his grandfather's, and apparently worth even more than I'd hoped. Still, walking out of that shop without the watch felt like leaving a piece of my heart behind. But I was excited. I couldn't wait to see Rebecca's face when I told her she could have the dress after all. "I'd like to pay for Rebecca Thompson's wedding dress," I told the shop assistant. "The one she was looking at yesterday. The ivory silk with the beaded bodice." The young woman's face lit up. "Oh, that's wonderful. She's coming in today for her final fitting with her bridesmaids. You can surprise her." A surprise. That sounded perfect. I decided to wait until Rebecca arrived so I could see her reaction when they told her the dress was paid for. I was sitting in the waiting area when I heard Rebecca's voice outside. She was early, but I heard her telling someone on the phone, "We'll be there in 5 minutes. The dress better still be available because I'm not going through this drama again." I decided to step into one of the larger fitting rooms to wait. I wanted to see her face when they gave her the good news. But as I ducked behind the curtain, I heard the shop door chime and Rebecca's voice getting closer. "This place better not give us any problems today," Rebecca was saying to someone. "I swear, if they try to upsell us on anything else, I'm walking out." "At least you don't have to worry about paying for it anymore," said a voice I recognized as her maid of honor, Sarah. That's when my heart started beating faster. Were they talking about the dress? Had someone else offered to pay? "Yeah. Thank God for that." Rebecca laughed. "My grandma showed up yesterday right after we left and apparently bought it. The shop owner called me this morning." I smiled behind the curtain. She knew. She was happy. "That's so sweet of her," said another voice. Probably one of the other bridesmaids. "Sweet?" Rebecca's voice turned sharp, and my smile faded. More like pathetic. She's so desperate to feel important that she'll pay for anything. It's honestly embarrassing. My hand flew to my mouth. I felt like I'd been slapped. "Rebecca, that's kind of harsh," Sarah said quietly. "She raised you, and $3,200 is a lot of money." "Please," Rebecca snorted. "She's always doing these dramatic sacrifices for attention. You should see how she acts." calling me 10 times a day, showing up at my apartment uninvited, trying to insert herself into every detail of my life. It's suffocating. I pressed myself against the back wall of the fitting room, my legs suddenly feeling weak. But the dress thing is really generous. Another bridesmaid said. How did she even afford it? She sold my grandpa's watch, Rebecca said. And I could practically hear her rolling her eyes. Like, who does that? It's embarrassing how she acts all broke and talks about her fixed income, but then drops $3,000 like it's nothing. She's so dramatic. My breathing became shallow. The watch. My precious watch. She knew I'd sold it, and she thought it was dramatic. Wait, she sold your grandfather's watch to buy your dress? Sarah sounded shocked. Rebecca, that seems really meaningful. That's exactly what I mean. Rebecca's voice got louder. Everything has to be this big gesture with her. She can't just be normal. She has to make everything about her emotions and her memories and her sacrifices. It's exhausting. I slumped against the fitting room wall, feeling like the air had been knocked out of me. I mean, don't get me wrong, Rebecca continued. I'm grateful for the dress, but let's be real. She needs me more than I need her at this point. She's getting old, she's lonely, and James and I are basically her only real family connection. Speaking of which, another bridesmaid said, how's the living situation working out? You said you guys might move in with her? After the wedding. Yeah, Rebecca said. And I could hear her moving around, probably trying on the dress. She has this 4-unit apartment building, and one of the units has been sitting empty for years. We literally can't afford market rent anywhere else right now, so it's perfect timing. That's amazing. Free rent in this economy? One of the girls said. I know, right? Rebecca laughed. And the best part is, once we're in there, she can't really kick us out. It's family property, and she's not going to make her only granddaughter homeless. She'd look like a monster. My knees nearly gave out. Family property? I owned that building. Robert and I had sacrificed for 30 years to pay it off. Plus, Rebecca continued, honestly, I think we're doing her a favor. She rattles around in that building all alone, and she's getting to that age where she probably shouldn't be living by herself anyway. Having us there gives her a purpose. You're so smart, Sarah said, using the guilt factor. It's not guilt, Rebecca protested. It's just reality. She raised me, so she kind of owes me, you know? And it's not like she's using that apartment for anything else. It's been empty since I moved out 6 years ago. I felt tears starting in my eyes. She thought I owed her? What about rent, though? Another bridesmaid asked. Won't she expect you to pay something? Rebecca laughed. Actually laughed. Are you kidding? She's so desperate for me to stay close that she'd probably pay me to live there. Besides, what's she going to do with the money? She's 75. It's not like she's going to start some new adventure. Fair point, someone said. Old people just want to feel needed anyway. Exactly, Rebecca said. And James is already planning how to set up his home office in the back bedroom. The whole apartment is bigger than I remembered. We'll basically have our own floor once we get rid of some of her old lady decorations. I gripped the empty watch box in my purse so tightly I thought it might crack. They were planning to redecorate my apartment? The apartment in my building? After the honeymoon, we'll start moving our stuff in. Rebecca continued. I figure we can live there for a few years, save up money, and then maybe buy our own place. By then, Grandma will probably need to move to assisted living anyway. Perfect plan, Sarah said. You're basically set for life. I know, Rebecca said. And I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. Sometimes things just work out exactly how they're supposed to. I stood there behind that curtain shaking like a leaf, as the full scope of Rebecca's plan became clear. She saw me as a lonely old woman, who could be manipulated with guilt and family obligation. She thought my building was her inheritance, my sacrifice was desperate attention-seeking, and my love was something she could exploit. The granddaughter I'd raised, the girl I'd given up my rental income for, the young woman I'd sold my most precious possession to help, she was planning to use me until I was no longer useful. And then I heard her say the words that changed everything. The funny thing is, Rebecca said, her voice getting clearer as she moved closer to my hiding spot, Grandma thinks she's being this generous, loving grandmother. But really? She's just buying her way into staying relevant in my life. It's kind of sad when you think about it. That's when I knew. My days of being Rebecca's free ride were over. I don't remember how I got out of that boutique. One minute I was pressed against the fitting room wall, listening to my granddaughter destroy my heart with every word, and the next minute I was sitting in my car in the parking lot, shaking so hard I couldn't get the key in the ignition. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. The empty watch box sat on the passenger seat like evidence of my stupidity. $3,500. Robert's watch. Gone. For a girl who thought I was pathetic and desperate. I sat there for 20 minutes, just trying to breathe. Cars pulled in and out around me. People going about their normal Thursday afternoon business, while my entire world shifted underneath me. How long had Rebecca seen me this way? How many times had she rolled her eyes when I called, when I visited, when I tried to be part of her life? The drive home was a blur. I kept hearing her voice. She's so desperate to feel important. She needs me more than I need her. She kind of owes me. When I finally made it back to my building, I just sat in the parking lot staring up at my home. 4 units. 3 currently rented out to nice families, who paid their rent on time and treated me with respect. The 4th unit, my unit, where I'd lived alone for 6 years, winding Robert's watch every morning and missing him every night. And upstairs, the empty apartment Rebecca was planning to claim. The apartment I'd kept vacant all these years, hoping she might need it, want it, choose to be close to me. Instead, she saw it as her right, her inheritance, her free ride. I climbed the stairs to my apartment, feeling every one of my 75 years. Inside, everything looked the same, but something fundamental had changed. I walked to my bedroom dresser, to the spot where Robert's watch had lived for 52 years. The small circle of dust where it used to sit looked like a wound. I opened the empty watch box and set it there instead. At least I had something to remind me of what I'd lost. My phone rang around 6 o'clock that evening. Rebecca's name lit up the screen, and for a moment, I considered not answering. But old habits die hard. "Hi, Grandma," she said, her voice bright and cheerful. "I just wanted to call and say thank you for the dress. You're seriously the best." I sat on my bed staring at the empty spot on my dresser. "You're welcome," I managed to say. "I can't believe you sold Grandpa's watch though," she continued, and I could hear something in her tone, not gratitude, but almost amusement. "You really didn't have to do something so dramatic." Dramatic. There was that word again. "It wasn't dramatic," I said quietly. "It was love." I know, Rebecca said. But she sounded distracted. "Anyway, the dress fits perfectly, and the alterations should be done next week. Oh, and James and I were talking. We're thinking we might move into the apartment next month, right after we get back from our honeymoon. Is that okay?" The casual way she asked, like it was a formality, like my answer didn't really matter, made my stomach turn. "We can talk about that later," I said. "Sure. But there's no rush," Rebecca said. "We know you want us close by. It'll be great. James is already planning his home office setup. Oh, and we were thinking we might repaint a few rooms, make it more our style. Nothing major, just freshen things up." Repaint. In my apartment. Our style. Not mine. "Rebecca," I started. But she cut me off. "Actually, I should go. We're meeting James's parents for dinner tonight. Love you, Grandma. And seriously, thank you again for the dress. You're the sweetest." She hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding my phone, realizing that she'd just confirmed everything I'd overheard. The casual assumption about moving in. The dismissive tone about my sacrifice. The plans for their apartment that belonged to me. Later that evening, I heard voices outside my window. Rebecca and James were standing in the parking lot, looking up at the building. I stayed back from the window, but I could hear pieces of their conversation drifting up. "Don't worry about rent anywhere else," Rebecca was saying. "Grandma needs us more than we need the apartment. She'll never kick out family." "Good," James replied. "Because I found the perfect setup for that back bedroom. And the kitchen's way bigger than I thought. We'll basically have our own floor once we paint over her old lady decorations. Old lady decorations. The pictures of Robert and me. The furniture we'd chosen together. The home we'd built. I stepped away from the window, my heart pounding. They weren't just planning to live in my apartment. They were planning to erase me from it. The next few days were torture. Every time my phone rang, every time I saw Rebecca's name, I remembered her voice saying pathetic and desperate and she owes me. But the worst part was how normal she acted when she called. She told me about her dress fitting, about the wedding planning, about how excited she was to be closer to family after the wedding. She never once thanked me properly for the watch. She never once asked how I was feeling about the sacrifice I'd made. It was like listening to a stranger wearing my granddaughter's voice. On Saturday morning, 3 days after the boutique incident, I was watering my plants when I overheard Rebecca on her phone in the parking lot again. She was talking to someone about apartment hunting. "We don't actually need to look at places," she was saying. "My grandma has this building, and she's basically promised us one of the units. Free rent. Can you believe it? She raised me, so she kind of owes me anyway." There it was again. She owed me. "The old lady's getting pretty lonely since my grandpa died," Rebecca continued. "Having us in the building will give her something to focus on. It's honestly kind of a favor to her." A favor. My blood ran cold. Plus, what's she going to do? Kick out her only granddaughter? She'd look like a monster. Family guilt is a powerful thing. I set down my watering can and stepped back from the window. Family guilt. She was counting on my love for her to make me easy to manipulate. She thought my loneliness made me desperate enough to accept any treatment, any level of disrespect, just to keep her in my life. And the awful truth was, she'd been right. Up until 3 days ago, she'd been absolutely right. I'd been so afraid of losing her that I'd let her treat me like an ATM, like free housing, like a convenience instead of a person. I'd sold the most precious thing I owned, and she'd called it dramatic. I'd offered her a home, and she'd seen it as her due. But something had shifted in me that day at the boutique. Maybe it was hearing my own voice described as suffocating. Maybe it was learning that she saw my building as her inheritance while I was still alive to hear it. Or maybe it was just that, after 6 years of missing Robert and feeling invisible, I'd finally heard someone see me clearly, and I didn't like what they saw. Rebecca was counting on my desperation to keep her close. What she didn't know was that she'd just cured me of that desperation forever. And on Monday morning she was going to learn that some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Monday morning I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. For the first time since Robert died, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I still had. And what I had was more power than Rebecca had ever bothered to realize. I made my coffee, but instead of winding a watch that was no longer there, I picked up my phone and called someone I hadn't spoken to in months. George Hartley, the lawyer who'd handled Robert's estate after he passed. "Dorothy?" George sounded genuinely pleased to hear from me. "How are you holding up? It's been too long." "I'm doing well, George. I have some questions about my building. If you have a few minutes." "Of course. What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath. I need to understand exactly what my rights are as the owner. Specifically, if family members assume they can live there for free. There was a pause. "Dorothy, is someone pressuring you about housing? Let's just say I need to know where I stand legally." George's voice became more serious. "You own that building outright. No mortgage, no liens, nothing. The deed is in your name alone since Robert passed. You have the absolute right to rent to whoever you choose, at whatever rate you choose, with whatever lease terms you decide. Nobody, and I mean nobody, has any legal claim to live there just because they're family. What about tenant rights? If someone moves in, can I ask them to leave? If they're not on a lease, they're considered guests, not tenants. You can ask anyone to leave your property at any time. Even with a lease, you're protected as long as you follow proper procedures." I felt something loosening in my chest. "And if I wanted to sell the building?" "It's yours to sell whenever you want. Have you had it appraised recently? Property values in your neighborhood have gone up significantly." After I hung up with George, I sat in my kitchen, looking around at my home with new eyes. This wasn't just where I lived. This was my asset, my security, my future. Robert and I had worked 30 years to own this building, free and clear. We'd sacrificed vacations, new cars, fancy dinners, all so we could have something solid to leave behind. And Rebecca saw it as her free ride. That afternoon, I called a real estate agent I'd seen advertising in the local paper. Patricia Mills came over the next day to do a walkthrough and market analysis. "Mrs. Sullivan," Patricia said as we stood in the vacant apartment Rebecca was planning to claim, "I have to tell you, this building is in excellent condition. You and your husband really took care of it." "What do you think it's worth?" I asked. Patricia consulted her tablet and looked around the space again. "In the current market, I'd estimate between $460,000 and $480,000. Maybe more if we get multiple offers." I nearly sat down right there in the empty living room. $480,000. "The location is perfect," Patricia continued. "Close to downtown. Good schools, quiet neighborhood. Properties like this don't stay on the market long." After Patricia left, I sat in that empty apartment and really looked at it. Rebecca was right about one thing: it was bigger than I'd remembered. 2 bedrooms, large kitchen, plenty of natural light. It could easily rent for $1,200 a month in the current market. Instead, I'd kept it empty for 6 years, losing over $86,000 in potential rental income, just hoping Rebecca might want to be close to me. The irony was bitter. I'd been so afraid of being alone that I'd made myself financially vulnerable. And Rebecca had been counting on that vulnerability. That evening, I called my other tenants to chat. The Johnsons in 2A had been there for 8 years, always paid on time, took care of their space. Mrs. Chen in 2B was a retired teacher who'd been there 5 years, kept the most beautiful flower boxes on her windows. The young couple in 3A had just had a baby and always asked how I was doing when they saw me. Real tenants. People who respected my property, paid their obligations, and treated me like a person instead of a resource. As I was talking to Mrs. Chen about her upcoming daughter's graduation, I realized something. I wasn't lonely because I lived alone. I was lonely because I'd been chasing after someone who didn't want to be caught. The next morning, Rebecca called right on schedule. "Hi, Grandma. How was your week?" "Eventful," I said, watching a cardinal land on my windowsill. "I've been doing some thinking." "Oh? About what?" "About the apartment situation." Rebecca's voice immediately became more focused. "Great. James and I were actually hoping to come look at it this weekend. We want to start planning the layout." "Planning the layout?" "In my apartment." "Rebecca," I said carefully, "I need to ask you something and I want you to be honest with me." "Sure, Grandma. What is it? Do you think I owe you a place to live?" There was a pause. What do you mean? I mean, do you think that because I raised you, I'm obligated to provide you with free housing as an adult?" Rebecca laughed nervously. "Grandma, that's a weird way to put it. We're family. Family helps family, right? And you have this space just sitting there empty." "That's not what I asked." Another pause. Longer this time. "Look, I just think it makes sense for everyone. You get company. We get a place to live while we save money. It's win-win." "And if I said no?" "Grandma, why would you say no? We're not strangers. I'm your granddaughter." I closed my eyes. Even now, even when directly asked, she couldn't admit that she saw this as something she deserved, rather than something I was choosing to give. "I'll think about it," I said. "Think about it?" Rebecca's voice sharpened. "Grandma, we've been planning this for months. We can't afford market rent right now, and James already gave notice at his current place." "He gave notice? When?" "Last week. We figured. It was pretty much decided, right?" My grip tightened on the phone. They'd made irreversible decisions based on assumptions about my property. James had quit his housing because they were so confident I couldn't say no. "Nothing was decided, Rebecca. This is my building." "I know it's your building, but do you?" I interrupted. "Do you really know that?" "Of course I do. What's that supposed to mean? I took a deep breath. It means that my building is not your inheritance. My apartments are not your backup plan. And my love for you is not something you can use to manipulate me into giving you things. Grandma, what are you talking about? I would never. Rebecca. My voice was steadier than it had been in years. I heard you. Silence. What do you mean? She asked. But her voice had changed. At the bridal boutique. Last Thursday, I was in the fitting room when you arrived with your bridesmaids. The silence stretched so long I thought she might have hung up. Grandma, she finally said, her voice small. I can explain. You called me pathetic. You said I was desperate for attention. You said selling your grandfather's watch was dramatic and embarrassing. I didn't mean. You told your friends that I owe you free housing because I raised you. You said I couldn't kick you out because of family guilt. You and James were planning to redecorate my apartment and get rid of my old lady decorations. Each word felt like pulling a splinter out of my heart. You said I need you more than you need me. I continued. You said what's the point of me having money since I'm 75 and won't start any new adventures? Grandma, please. You were just showing your friends who you really are. And now I know too. Rebecca started crying. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean any of it. I was just trying to sound cool in front of my friends. You know how that is. But I didn't know how that was. In 75 years, I'd never thrown someone I loved under the bus to impress strangers. Rebecca, I said quietly. Do you love me? Of course I love you. You're my grandmother. But do you like me? Do you enjoy my company? Do you look forward to my phone calls? Another long silence. Do you see me as a person? I continued. Or as a service provider? That's not fair, she whispered. Answer the question. You're my grandmother, she repeated. But it sounded hollow. That's when I knew. She loved the idea of me, the grandmother who provided housing and wedding dresses and safety nets, but she didn't actually like spending time with the real me. She didn't enjoy my stories, my advice, my company. She tolerated me because I was useful. Rebecca, I said, I need you to understand something. The apartment you've been planning to live in? I'm not giving it to you. Not for free. Not for reduced rent. Not at all. But Grandma, James already gave notice. We don't have anywhere else to go. Then you'll need to figure something out. Like adults do. You can't do this to me. I'm family. And there it was. Not please, or, I'm sorry, or, how can I make this right? Just you can't. Like she had some kind of claim on my property. I can do whatever I want, Rebecca. It's my building. But where will we live? That's not my problem to solve. The words felt foreign coming out of my mouth, but also liberating. For the first time in 6 years, I was putting my own needs first. I can't believe you're doing this, Rebecca said, her tears turning to anger. After everything we've been through together. After I let you be part of my wedding planning. She'd let me pay for her dress and feel grateful for the privilege. Rebecca, I said. I hope you have a beautiful wedding, but I won't be funding your life anymore. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm putting the building on the market next week. The line went quiet except for her sharp intake of breath. You're selling the building? You can't sell the building? What about your income? What about your home? I'm 75 years old, I said, echoing her words back to her. Maybe it's time for a new adventure. I hung up on Rebecca while she was still protesting, and for the first time in months, my apartment felt peaceful instead of empty. Within an hour, my phone started ringing. Rebecca, James, Rebecca, again. I let them all go to voicemail. Then Rebecca's mother called, my former daughter-in-law who'd barely spoken to me since David died. Linda said, Dorothy, what's this nonsense about selling your building? Rebecca is hysterical. I replied, it's not nonsense, Linda. It's my decision. Linda protested, but where will the kids live? They can't afford market rent. I told her, That sounds like something they should have considered before James gave notice at his current place. I hung up on her too. The next morning, I called Patricia Mills and said, "I'd like to list the building. How soon can we start?" Patricia answered, "I can have the paperwork ready by this afternoon. With the market the way it is, I expect we'll have offers within a week." I also made another call to the bridal boutique. I said, "Hi, this is Dorothy Sullivan. I paid for Rebecca Thompson's wedding dress last week. I need to cancel that payment." The shop assistant sounded confused and said, "Oh, is there a problem with the dress?" I explained, "The problem is with the recipient. I'd like to stop payment and have the dress returned to your inventory." The assistant replied, Well, that's unusual, but if the payment hasn't been processed yet, let me check with my manager." 20 minutes later, they called back. The payment could be reversed, since alterations hadn't begun yet. 2 hours after that, Rebecca called, sobbing. Rebecca cried, "Grandma, the bridal shop called. They said you canceled payment on my dress. There has to be some mistake." I said calmly, "No mistake. I decided Robert's watch was worth more than funding someone who thinks I'm pathetic and desperate." Rebecca wailed, "But my dress? The wedding is in 3 weeks." I told her, "Then you better figure out how to pay for it yourself." Rebecca protested, "I can't afford $3,200. That's why you bought it in the first place." I explained, "No, Rebecca. I bought it because I loved you and wanted to make you happy. But you don't want my love, you just want my money." She cried harder and begged, "Please, Grandma. I'll apologize. I'll make it right. Just don't take away my dress." I said firmly, "The dress is the least of your problems. Where are you going to live?" That evening, Rebecca showed up at my building. I watched from my window as she stood in the parking lot, looking up at the apartment she'd planned to claim. James was with her, and they were clearly arguing. I didn't answer when she knocked. The next day, Patricia Mills put up the for sale sign. Rebecca called 16 times. I answered once. "Grandma, please. Let's talk about this." I said I was sorry. "Rebecca, do you remember what you told your friends? That I need you more than you need me?" I was wrong about that. "No, you weren't. I did need you more. But not anymore." "What do you mean?" "I mean I've spent 6 years being lonely. Desperate for your attention. Willing to accept crumbs of affection just to feel connected to you. And you took advantage of that. I didn't mean to. Whether you meant to or not, you did. And now I'm choosing something different." "What are you choosing?" "I'm choosing to stop needing you." Within 5 days we had 3 offers on the building. I accepted one for $475,000. Cash. 30-day closing. Rebecca tried everything. She brought James to apologize. She had her mother call again. She even showed up with photos from when she was little, trying to remind me of the good times. But I'd already started my new life. I used part of the building money to put a deposit on a beautiful apartment in a 55 and over community across town. Riverside Gardens had a pool, a fitness center, organized activities, and residents who actually wanted to spend time together. The day before closing, Rebecca made one last attempt. "Grandma, I know I hurt you, but you're throwing away our whole relationship over one conversation." "No," I said. "I'm protecting myself from more conversations like that one." "But we're family." "Family doesn't use each other, Rebecca. Family doesn't take advantage of love and call it pathetic." I was 24 and stupid. People make mistakes. And people live with consequences. The building sold on a Tuesday. By Thursday, I'd moved into my new apartment at Riverside Gardens. My neighbor Eleanor helped me hang pictures, and we had coffee on my new balcony while I told her about Robert and the watch and how I was learning to value myself again. "Good for you," Eleanor said. "My granddaughter tried to pull something similar a few years ago. They think because we're old, we're desperate and stupid." "Were you lonely after you cut her off?" I asked. Eleanor smiled. "Honey, I was lonelier when she was using me than I've ever been since." On Saturday, I did something I hadn't done in 6 years. I bought myself a new watch. Not expensive, not vintage, just a simple silver watch that would keep my time, my schedule, my life. As I was leaving the jewelry store, my phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Grandma. I hope you're happy. James and I had to take a studio apartment we can barely afford. The wedding is canceled because we spent everything on deposits. I hope it was worth it. I looked at that text for a long time. Then I typed back. I spent 12 years raising you and 6 years missing you. Now I'm learning to miss you from a distance. Yes, it was worth it. That evening, I sat on my new balcony, wearing my new watch, looking out at a community pool, where people my age were actually swimming and laughing and enjoying their lives. Tomorrow there was a book club meeting. Thursday, water aerobics. Next week, a bus trip to see the fall leaves. For the first time since Robert died, I wasn't waiting for someone else to make me feel valuable. I wasn't selling my memories to buy someone's attention. I wasn't accepting disrespect in exchange for connection. I was just Dorothy Sullivan, 75 years old, with a bank account that could fund years of adventures and a new watch that marked time for me alone. And you know what? That was enough. So, that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. At what point do you stop giving family members chances and start protecting yourself from being used? Let me know in the comments and subscribe if you want to hear more stories like mine.